The air hung heavy, thick with the smell of salt and something else, something alien. It was as if the very atmosphere was trying to warn us, to push us back from the threshold we were about to cross. The oppressive weight of the air pressed down on us, making each breath a laborious task, each step a conscious effort. The shimmer shimmered, a translucent wall separating the known from the unknown. It was a barrier that seemed to pulse with a life of its own, a living entity that both repelled and beckoned. The light refracted through it in strange, mesmerizing patterns, creating an almost hypnotic effect that made it hard to look away. We were four, each carrying the weight of past failures, each driven by a desire to understand this anomaly that had swallowed our predecessors. Our team was a mix of scientists and soldiers, each with their own reasons for being here, each with their own demons to face. The sense of purpose was palpable, a shared determination that bound us together despite our differences.
I, Lena, biologist, led the expedition. My background in cellular biology made me the logical choice, but it was more than just logic that drove me. There was a personal connection, a need to understand what had happened to those who came before us, to find answers that had eluded us for so long. Our mission to reach the lighthouse, the point from which no signal had ever returned. It stood as a silent sentinel, a beacon of mystery and danger. The lighthouse was our destination, but it was also a symbol of the unknown, a place where reality seemed to bend and twist in ways we couldn't yet comprehend.
The boundary crossed, the world shifted. It was as if we had stepped into another dimension, a place where the rules of nature no longer applied. The air felt different, charged with an energy that was both exhilarating and terrifying. The landscape around us began to change, morphing into something both familiar and alien. Colors seemed brighter, yet muted, as if viewed through a veil of water. The hues were more vibrant, yet there was a softness to them, a dreamlike quality that made everything seem slightly out of focus. It was disorienting, a sensory overload that made it hard to trust our own perceptions. The air vibrated with an unseen energy, a hum that resonated deep within our bones. It was a constant, low-frequency vibration that seemed to sync with our very beings, a reminder that we were in a place where the normal rules didn't apply. This hum was both comforting and unsettling, a paradox that added to the surreal nature of our surroundings. Fear, primal and instinctive, coiled in my gut. It was a fear that went beyond rational thought, a deep-seated terror that spoke to the most ancient parts of our brains. This was a place that defied understanding, a place where the unknown reigned supreme, and that was a terrifying prospect. Yet, there was also an unsettling allure, a siren song that beckoned us deeper into the heart of the shimmer. It was as if the very landscape was calling to us, drawing us in with its strange beauty and promise of secrets waiting to be uncovered. This duality of fear and fascination was a constant companion, a reminder of the stakes involved.
Our steps were cautious, each footfall measured. We moved with the precision of people who knew that one wrong move could spell disaster. The ground beneath our feet was unfamiliar, a mix of textures and consistencies that made every step a calculated risk. The terrain, once familiar coastline, had transformed into a lush, almost prehistoric landscape. It was as if we had stepped back in time, to an era when the world was wild and untamed. The vegetation was dense and vibrant, a riot of colors and shapes that seemed to defy the natural order. Giant ferns cast long shadows, and flowers of impossible hues bloomed with an eerie luminescence. The plant life was both beautiful and unsettling, a reminder that we were in a place where the normal rules of biology didn't apply. These were plants that seemed to have a life of their own, a sentience that was both fascinating and frightening.
But beneath this beauty, a sense of wrongness pervaded, a disharmony that set our teeth on edge. It was as if the very fabric of reality was fraying at the edges, a subtle but constant reminder that we were in a place that defied understanding. This sense of wrongness was a constant undercurrent, a background noise that we couldn't ignore. As we ventured further, the silence became oppressive, broken only by the crunch of our boots on the unfamiliar terrain. It was a silence that seemed to swallow sound, a void that made every noise seem amplified and out of place. This oppressive silence added to the sense of isolation, a reminder that we were far from the world we knew. We spoke little, each lost in their thoughts, the weight of our mission pressing down on us. The enormity of what we were undertaking was a constant presence, a weight that we carried with us every step of the way. Each of us was grappling with our own fears and doubts, but we were united in our determination to see this through.
The shimmer was changing us. I could feel it, a subtle unraveling at the edges of my mind. It was as if the very essence of this place was seeping into us, altering our perceptions and thoughts. This change was both subtle and profound, a creeping sense of unease that was hard to shake. But I pushed the thought away, clinging to the hope that we might yet return, our sanity intact. This hope was a fragile thing, a flickering flame in the darkness, but it was enough to keep us moving forward. We had come too far to turn back now, and the promise of answers was a powerful motivator.
Days blurred into nights, a seamless transition that left us disoriented and unsure of the passage of time. The sun and moon seemed to follow their own rhythm within the shimmer, their paths crossing in ways that defied all logic and reason. Their cycles were erratic and unpredictable, as if the very fabric of time was being manipulated by an unseen force. Our compasses spun uselessly, their needles dancing wildly with no regard for true north. Our maps, once reliable guides, were rendered obsolete by the ever-shifting landscape that seemed to change with each passing moment. We were lost in a labyrinth of our own making, each step forward only deepening the mystery and confusion. The forest paths twisted and turned, leading us in circles and dead ends. The flora grew stranger, more alien with each passing day. Plants we had never seen before sprouted from the ground, their colors and shapes defying all known botanical classifications. Vines pulsed with an internal light, their tendrils reaching out like grasping hands, as if they were alive and aware of our presence. Trees twisted into impossible shapes, their bark adorned with patterns that seemed to writhe and shift before our eyes, creating an ever-changing tapestry of unsettling designs. The air itself felt alive, charged with an unseen energy that made our skin crawl and our senses heighten. Every rustle of leaves, every distant sound seemed amplified and filled with hidden meaning. We encountered the first sign of the shimmer's true nature near a grove of bioluminescent fungi. Their glow cast eerie shadows, illuminating the forest in another worldly light. Humanoid figures, sculpted from vines and leaves, stood frozen in grotesque parodies of life. Their forms were disturbingly human, yet undeniably plant-like. Their eyes, formed from luminous blossoms, stared blankly ahead, their limbs contorted at unnatural angles. It was as if they were caught in a moment of transformation, forever trapped between two worlds. A cold dread settled over me, a primal fear that gnawed at the edges of my sanity. The realization that we were not alone, that the forest itself was watching us, was inescapable. These were not statues, not simply the work of nature. They were too detailed, too eerily lifelike to be mere coincidences of growth. They were too detailed, too eerily lifelike. Each figure seemed to tell a story, a silent testament to the shimmer's power and its ability to warp reality. The shimmer was not just changing the environment, it was twisting life itself into something new, something unsettling and wholly unfamiliar. The very essence of the forest was being rewritten, and we were helpless witnesses to its transformation. I began to document these changes, hoping to make sense of the chaos. Each entry in my journal was a desperate attempt to capture the surreal and ever-shifting reality around us. We shared our observations, our fears, and our theories, trying to piece together the puzzle of the shimmer, but the more we learned, the more questions arose, and the deeper the mystery became. Despite the fear and uncertainty, a resolve began to form within us. We would uncover the truth behind the shimmer, no matter the cost. The grip of the shimmer tightened, but so did our determination to break free from its grasp. The attack came without warning. One moment, the forest was eerily quiet, the next, chaos erupted around us. We were making our way through a dense thicket, the air thick with the scent of rotting vegetation and something faintly metallic. The forest seemed to close in on us, every step a struggle against the oppressive atmosphere. A low growl, barely audible at first, sent shivers down my spine. It was a sound that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, a haunting echo that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up.
Then it was upon us, a creature of nightmare, a grotesque fusion of bear and something else, something far more sinister. Its presence was overwhelming, a dark shadow that blotted out the sun. Its fur was a matted tangle of thorns and vines, its eyes glowing with a malevolent intelligence. Those eyes seemed to pierce through us, as if it could see into the very depths of our souls. Razor-sharp claws, tipped with what looked like bone, flashed in the dappled sunlight. Each movement was a blur of deadly precision, a dance of death that left no room for error.
We scattered, our training kicking in even as terror threatened to overwhelm us. The forest became a maze of shadows and fear, every tree a potential hiding place, every rustle a sign of impending doom. Anya, our anthropologist, wasn't fast enough. Her eyes wide with fear, she stumbled, her foot catching on a root. The creature slammed into her, its weight throwing her against a tree trunk. The impact was brutal, a sickening thud that seemed to reverberate through the forest. A sickening crack echoed through the clearing. It was a sound that would haunt us all, a reminder of our helplessness in the face of such raw power.
We opened fire, our weapons spitting uselessly against the creature's thick hide. Bullets seemed to bounce off, leaving only superficial marks on its impenetrable armor. It roared, a sound that seemed to split the very air before turning its attention back to Anya. The roar was a declaration of dominance, a chilling reminder of our insignificance. She screamed, a high-pitched wail of agony and terror. Her voice cut through the chaos, a desperate plea for help that we were powerless to give.
I watched in horror, my blood turning to ice as the creature tore into her with its claws, its jaws stained crimson. The scene was a nightmare come to life, a tableau of violence and despair. Then, just as suddenly as it had attacked, it vanished back into the undergrowth, leaving behind a scene of carnage and the echo of our despair. The forest, once a place of beauty and mystery, had become a graveyard of our hopes and dreams. Anya's death shattered our fragile unity. We buried her beneath a willow tree, its branches weeping with what looked like tears. Grief, raw and all-consuming, threatened to drown us. But there was no time for mourning, not while the shimmer continued its insidious work.
It was Shepard, our physicist, who first noticed the changes in himself. His hands, once steady, now trembled uncontrollably. His words came out slurred, his thoughts disjointed and confused. He complained of headaches, blinding migraines that left him weak and disoriented.
Then came the physical changes. His skin took on a greenish tinge, his eyes flickering with an unnatural light. We watched in horror as a network of veins, pulsing with an eerie luminescence, spread across his chest like a macabre tattoo.
The shimmer was rewriting our DNA, twisting us into something monstrous, something inhuman. Fear gave way to a chilling realization. The plant-human hybrids, the grotesque creatures, they weren't aberrations. They were the shimmer's endgame, the final stage of its transformation.
We were not explorers, not anymore. We were subjects in a grand, terrifying experiment, our humanity slowly being stripped away, replaced by something alien and unknown.